Today, we discuss everything 107 in your Dynasty Superflex rookie drafts. We discuss who we are seriously considering to pick here, trade strategies, meta strategies, tiering up, down, all around town, as well as who we are selecting to pick here as a podcast. Stick around for all that and more. Welcome into the Down Extraction Podcast. Justin, David, JP, bringing to you another episode of our Dynasty Draft Guide. What to do with the 1-0, insert number here. And today's episode is, as we mentioned, the 107. If you missed the 101 to 106, have a playlist of them down in the episode description below, ready to go for you. 08 through 12 coming up soon. So make sure to hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell to not miss a beat. That being said, David, let the fine people know who we've picked so far.
So no surprise at the top, 101 Ashton Janty, 102 definitely a little more contested. We went to McMillan, 103 QB1 Cam Ward, 104 running back Omarion Hampton, 105 running back Travion Henderson, and 106 tight end Tyler Warren.
Yeah, some great players so far. Of course, as you mentioned, some contention there. We might even redraft that 2 through 4 tier differently today and tomorrow and the next day. It's very team need dependent. We're getting to another situation, I think, at this 107 where it's a little not that clear who we should be taking here. Could be somewhat team need dependent as well. Who are those players that we are really in consideration for at this point? JP.
So we are considering wide receiver here. We still have wide receiver 2 through 4 available here, and that is wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver Luther Burden, Matthew Golden from Texas as well. All three of these wide receivers, we don't see that big of a gap in their prospect profiles, especially when you're listening to the NFL draft community where Matthew Golden is maybe going to be a round one wide receiver as well as these other two guys. And also we are considering guys like Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, Quinshon Judkins at running back, and Caleb Johnson as well. So a lot of players still in consideration in this big tier that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. Some exciting players to be talked about here. QBs in Superflex, wide receivers, their money, and some stud running backs potentially talk about. Probably would have been the RB1 in last year's class had these guys been available. And we're talking RB4 and 5 in the class, right? Kind of nuts, some of the depth and value that we have in the later round here. Pretty exciting place to be picking, but even when we're excited to potentially pick at a draft spot, even when we're excited to pick at the 101, we are not being good general managers for our fantasy teams if we are not at least exploring what trade options are available there. We're going to start by looking at trades that have happened in real leagues because good artists borrow, great artists steal. So go steal some ideas on what has happened in real leagues from dynasty-daddy.com like we just did here. Going to start with a start 10, one tight end premium, looking at kind of the concept of tiering down, 107 or the 109 and 208, David.
Yeah, that's a good question because 109 is right around where we're projecting a tier break after the NFL draft, that is. So you're risking a little bit there, but we still, as we talked about in previous episodes, we still don't think that tier, like the middle tier and the late tier, are going to be too far apart. And I really like the second round in this draft. I think there's a lot of talent that you might be able to hit on. I think I'd probably do this. I might, if I know the league and I know I can wait until I'm on the clock or at least closer to the draft to get this done, might wait. But if I'm nervous this might go away or something like that, and I don't have any interest in moving up, I'd be okay with this.
Yeah, you do also have the potential that if that tier between the 107 and 109 is universally acknowledged as nothing, you couldn't possibly tier down. You'd have to go to the 10, 11, right? The next tier, right? So you could be throwing money away. What if we make that smaller of a margin? The 107 or the 108 and 303, JP. You're making less money, but you're moving down by less. Which way are we going here?
I think I do it because if you're getting a running back at the top of the third of the 303, I think it's probably a pretty good handcuff, and if a starter goes down in front of him, I'm just projecting it to be a running back because we're targeting running backs in this range and this draft, this rookie draft specifically. And I think maybe that 303, that player you get there, you might be able to sell for a second if the starter ahead of them goes down. So I think I would like to do that because I'm happy to move down this tier and pick up pieces, even if it is an early third.
Yeah, I thought these were both interesting ideas and very viably ideas that might not be available come the NFL draft if the tiers don't shape up the way it is. So it's just a question of risk, right? You're risking maybe not getting as much as you can. You're also, by not making trades like these, risking maybe I won't be able to get anything because other people will view it as a tier. Know your league, right? If people in your league might have take clock and player takes, these type of tiers up will be available even if there is a clear tier because somebody just really loves Quentin Johnson, and has to go up and get him. So also know your leagues a little bit when considering whether or not these trades should be made now or later. Moving on to some running back questions. Start 11, Jonathan Taylor, or the 107 and a 26 third, David?
Now, this is definitely a tough question here. I'm not the biggest Jonathan Taylor fan right now. He's getting a little older. That offense has a ton of question marks for me. I don't think the touchdown upside is that great for him. Also, wouldn't be shocked if they take someone in the middle rounds of this class that takes a little bit of work from him. They haven't really had that guy for a few years now. So I'm going to stick with the 107 and the 26th third. I like my chances of getting a running back. I like the same amount as Taylor there if that's what I need. And if it's not what I need, then I'm going to keep my flexibility. So yeah, I'll stick with the pick there because I think I'll be able to get a running back, around the same but younger as I would with Taylor.
Can't blame me for that. I could see going either way, just depending if I have a good RB roster construction. I think I prefer the 107 as well. Give me the 26th third. David, do we have a similar process? And moving on, JP, start 10, James Cook or the 107?
I think this is also a tough one. I think you could go either way. We're looking at start 10 here. I think James Cook, he established himself as a really good running back in the league. He's still not too old. He finished as an RB1. He's 25 years old. And I do think he's going to get a pretty big extension. His brother Dalvin Cook's been saying, hey, come on, let's get this guy. I can't remember the number, $15 million a year or something, which I don't know how much he's going to get, but I expect that he will be extended. I think it does speak volumes about how good James Cook is when you saw Ray Davis, when he stepped in, he looked good. And as soon as James Cook was healthy, they put James Cook right back into his role where he was the lead dog. He's got pass catching chops. This year, he proved that he could have a higher touchdown sim than we expected. He's in a good offense. So I'm going to stick with the player who I believe is good. He's established and is in a good offense over the 107 today. But it's close. You could go either way.
Yeah, I'm sure if you were looking to go into a rebuild and couldn't do better, you would easily take the 107 because it's close, right? But in that vacuum, I think Cook is not a bad value there either. Now, it's an interesting part of the draft. We are in, this is still mid, right? But it's technically a playoff first, right? At this point, we're no longer early first. No one's considering this an early first. 106 is technically mid, but because it missed the playoffs, people feel like it's earlier, right? Are we getting to that point yet where we are starting to consider rolling this over for a 26 first, I guess, is the very first question I'm going to ask David, then JP.
I think this is typically around when we would do that. So if I'm still building for the future, I would be interested in that. I'd have to vet the first because it's still a little early in the draft for me. But I just feel like with how deep this tier from 105 to currently for us like 201 is, I think I want to hold for now, try to be patient and hope that I get some good landing spots this year, player I really like, or get a plus on top of that. Because I mean, we are on the back half of the first round, but the first pick of that, I still think you could end up with like your fifth highest rated rookie here. I think a lot of people will. Yeah, I think I'd need a plus unless I vetted that first and was really excited to get it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to roll over, 9 times out of 10, you're a rebuilding team. 108, 109 is usually when you start considering rolling over. 107, I think this year is more fair because I do think that it's not quite as rich in the middle as some other years in the rookie draft. But yeah, I think at this point, David, what you said is probably better advice, probably better to hold right now. If you can get a plus on top of that first right now, I think maybe that would be enough to push me over. Like a third, I'm kind of thinking about it. Second, I definitely would, I think, today. Third, I had to think about it.
Yeah, in our 106 episode where we posited the question, the 106 or a random 26 first and second, and we were kind of still all in a vacuum on the 26 first side, but I think probably we're all in a vacuum on the 26 first and second over the 107. Do you agree with that as well, like JP just said, David?
Yeah, I think in most cases I would. I still think there's some teams where I'd rather hold on to the 107, but yeah, that's a lot more attractive now at this point.
All right, but I definitely agree. Not just looking to roll this one flat over unless that manager is just, it's the 102 or 3 next year. Then I'm willing to do it, right? There are teams that are just that bad, and the manager really is just like, I know the guy at 107 is a guarantee to get me into the playoffs. I'm just like, yep, he is. how'd you know? You're a genius, but yeah.
No, 100%.
And next question we're going to look at here. We've done a lot of talking about tearing down. We even did so in our earlier questions, how we're happy to tear down to the 108, 109 and not even pick up that much, right? But let's get aggressive. Let's look to tier up. Let's look to do some hammer hunting within this draft class first. And let's say we're looking to tier up to the 102, 103 range. I'm going to start with JP. Send me an offer verbally, and I'll tell you whether or not I accept that offer. I am looking to rebuild for what that's worth. I don't really want the running back. I don't believe in Cam Ward. So I'm open to business.
All right, let's call it 103. It's going to be slightly more attainable than the 102, just based on numbers here. But I'll offer you the 107 and my 26 first. I'm probably a playoff team for that 103.
Yeah, I'd take that. I'm happy to split assets. If it's a start 9, I'm less likely to take it, but I probably still would take it. Hope I can be lucky enough, smart enough to hit the hammer at the 107 and pocket the first.
And I feel like I'm probably on a competing team. That is something that I could realistically see myself doing if I think that Hampton, he's probably the piece that's going to really give me a strong chance to make a championship push. I think that is a fair enough deal. The 102, like if you can get that same offer for the 102, sure, I'll do it. But David, what about for the 104, right? So we see that as a tier. Would you throw the 107 and a 26 first for the 104?
I mean, I'm not sure I would do it for the 102. I think that's what you'd have to pay to do it, but I just don't know that I love anyone other than Janty enough to give a future first from the 107. I think I could hear the argument, and I think if you fall in love with a guy and he fits your roster construction and you're a playoff team, blah blah blah, yeah, maybe. But I'll answer the question this way: if you've gone through all that and you're like, man, I got to have Cam Ward, or I got to have Omarion Hampton, whoever it is, and you're willing to pay that at the 102, and he falls to the 104, that's what it takes to get it done. You've already established you're willing to pay that for the player. You could try to get it a little cheaper now that it's the 104, but if you're willing to pay that for Hampton, it doesn't matter where you get him in the draft, you're getting him. So to me, if your guy's there at the 104 and you're willing to do this to the 102 for him, yeah, sure. But that's obviously more of a when the 104 is on the clock situation because you don't know who's going to fall.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable point. I'm not talking the 106, the 107, but I'm at the 106 and talking about paying a first to move up potentially to the 102. I know it's the price. I know I'm not moving down for any less than that if I have that pick. It's very hard to pay that price. It's an uncomfortable point, but I think it's the price of doing business unless you find a sucker who will take the 208, 212, 303, and 306 and pretend like I can put four quarters together and really make $1 with draft picks. It's not how that works, by the way.
Say you're looking for tech. Can you add in a Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison or someone with some value in that range, but maybe doesn't have the ceiling you're looking for? So now you actually you're replacing that player on your roster 1-for-1, but you're giving yourself more ceiling. I can see it in that situation. You're only giving up 1 first there and a player worth roughly a first that maybe you're not as high on, or I'm not as high on personally.
Yeah, we always suggest that type of construction. If you're really high on, I think I have Flowers a bucket ahead of Addison. So if you don't, if you pick a guy that people value as worth the first, right? Insert name here, ask them which wide receivers are worth the first on my roster and throw one of them in for them. A lot of time people will tell you and give you that information as well. So that's a great idea there, David. Talked a little bit about tiering down, buying running back. If you want to talk about how we'd buy wide receivers with a pick in this tier, we kind of hammered that one in the 106 episode, and we view these picks as pretty commensurate in value, but names we threw out. If you can get T. Higgins, go for it. Devonta Smith, that's fair. I did see a DK Metcalf come up a couple times. I don't think any of us are really paying that, and we're all probably selling any DK Metcalf we have in a vacuum at this price, right, guys?
Yeah.
At 107 price, you getting 107 for DK? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would do it for 108, probably even 109.
That's why I didn't pick those Dynasty Daddy trades. Remember when I said I can't find any trades for these picks? I also saw it a lot for the 108. So maybe we'll ask that again next episode. All right. So it's kind of tough talking about wide receivers. We talked a little bit about it in the last episode. We're a little bit in no man's land. David, at the 107 and kind of the fact that we're struggling to probably get a Higgins, a Smith potentially, are we looking to probably stick and pick if we need wide receiver, or tier down to the older vets like we talked about last episode and pick something up?
Yeah, I still think you're looking good here at 107 for hopefully one of Egbuka or Burden. I guess if Golden's your guy, then he should be in this range as well. If the draft doesn't fall your way, you can always adjust, see what's out there. But I'm not rushing to make a a move right now from here if I'm looking wide receiver. Like we said, I might send out feelers for some guys and see if, Odunze, Higgins, one of those managers is a little shaky. Probably going to have to add to the 107 realistically, but I'd add like probably mid-second for those guys without thinking. I'd probably add more realistically.
That's pretty much along some of the similar thought process I have here. Feel like we've talked through just about everything we can do about this pick. But let's say none of the talks, none of the trades have come to fruition, and we have to pick. Who are we seriously considering at this point then?
Yeah, David gave the pitch last episode for Emeka Egbuka. I'm going to give the pitch on him this time. I mean, I just think he is a very safe, reliable wide receiver in this league. And that's not to say, I think that frequently he's viewed as he's got no upside at all. I mean, we have seen from slot wide receivers, even like a guy like Amon-Ra ascend out of that Cooper Kupp. So I do think that there is at least some sort of ceiling. I do think it is slightly capped, but I don't think it's as I think it's pretty overstated overall. But I mean, we recently got reception perception dropped a profile on him. He's 86th percentile against zone. That's kind of expected. And he also had a 1%, is 1.8% drop rate as well, with a 75% contested catch rate. So not only is this guy going to be sitting in zone coverage right where you need him to be, you can trust he's going to be there on the right spot, but also he's going to come down with the ball very frequently. So I think the team's going to really value that a lot. He also ran in the 4.4s at his pro day. He is around 200 pounds. He's pretty thick. People don't think that he's a big guy, but like I said, he's good in the contested catch department. He's got pretty good size, and he's also a really good blocker. Like, I'm not just saying that. I hear people just raving about him and how most of Ohio State's big runs, Emeka Egbuka had a really key block. So I think teams are going to value him highly. And even though he is a slot kind of guy, I think teams are going to want to keep him on the field as much as possible. And I think he can play flanker as well to play, 80, 90% of the snaps on an NFL team.
And if we are not looking to go with the wide receiver here, which I think it's very justifiable to, especially pre-draft, not knowing who the wide receiver 2 is going to be, but I feel very confident in telling you who's going to be the QB2 at this point. I know there's a few people who will tell you otherwise, but I would be happy to put some money down that it's going to be Shedeur Sanders, the second quarterback going in our Superflex draft. Just the safety of knowing I'm getting the QB2 versus I could be getting the wide receiver for pre-draft. I'm making this pick this direction. Then B, just the fact that I think Sanders, well, of course, I think I'd prefer Ward to him in a vacuum. I would certainly, at the price point, right, where you can get him in a startup draft. He just went in the 7th round of our startup draft that we did a mock with live people a couple days ago. He's going at the 107, 8, 9 potentially. I think at the 107, he's not a bad value. If he drops anywhere past this, he becomes kind of close to a steal. And at the 107, I mean, this is a guy who has had a fantastic career. 24, 37 to 10, touchdown interception ratio on the career, 134 to 27. Not a huge rushing guy, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. I think we probably expect him to rush a little bit less in the pros than he did in the college ranks, just because we don't think it's a huge part of his game, and the NFL is a faster, harder game to run at. And I think he's probably smart enough not to try to put his body out there too much. He's more of a scramble to throw type of a guy. I've heard comps of like high-end comps of productivity to like a Tua Tagovailoa, right? The arm strength, it's there. It's not blow you away, Justin Herbert arm strength, right? But accuracy, right? And smart, and puts the ball where it needs to be. A guy who could be a great QB2 for your fantasy teams. And we need guys like that a lot of the time, especially if you have one of those elite quarterbacks and you're getting him as your second QB, potentially to anchor your Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. I think he's a fantastic pick here. Did you guys know he's also a legacy player? I don't think anyone else knows this. Yeah. Deion Sanders' son. It's crazy, right? You would have never known. So I think there's a lot to be said here for why we should be taking him. And David, pick me.
Yeah, this one is kind of tough. I think you've both made very good arguments. Shedeur, position scarcity, is going to be QB2. If he gets the draft capital, he'll be a top 5 pick. So he'll likely at least start for, a year or two, if not hopefully more if he actually hits. Egbuka, I talked about last episode, JP talked about today's, a very safe wide receiver. I think if I'm making the pick today, I'm going to lean Emeka Egbuka, the safety of the wide receiver. I think Shedeur will end up going top 5, but I'm not positive. And if he does slide a bit, that scares me. I'm also not like super high on him. He doesn't have the highest upside like we talked about. He's not exactly a running quarterback. He's not unathletic either. He was clocked at like 19.9 miles an hour, which is pretty darn good. So he can't can move a little bit, but he is definitely a scramble to throw guy, as Justin pointed out. So I'm going to take the safety of Emeka Egbuka. I believe he's going to fit into whatever offense he lands in. I think at worst he'll be the number 2 target and a safety blanket for some of the shorter routes and first downs and things. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the safety here. Doesn't play safety, but the safety of the prospect.
I'm just going to push back a little bit here on just my personal, if I was drafting today, I think I would go the direction of a running back over the wide receiver here. And I do feel like there's a pretty good chance Ibuka is the wide receiver 2 in this class, but I think a Judkins or Johnson, I think they're just phenomenal prospects, both of them. And I think that's the direction I would like to go, capitalizing on the strength of this RB class. I feel like they're getting punished and pushed down a little bit. They're guys that I think are commensurate in profile with a lot of other phenomenal RBs that we've seen in recent years. They're not probably quite Breece Hall level. They're definitely not Bijan, Gibbs, or Janty level. But outside of those 3, Bijan, Gibbs, Janty, they're pretty close to everyone else that we've seen in recent years, and I think are both going to be phenomenal RBs, and I think are kind of just suffering from how much phenomenal RB there is in this class.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I guess I would just say I think there's a realistic chance Judkins and or Caleb go in the 3rd. Also think there's a realistic chance they don't get the best landing spot. Everybody has that chance, but especially a running back. So, I keep going back to it, but with Egbuka, I just feel like the floor is so high at this point, and we're drafting before the NFL draft, so I'm valuing that maybe a little too much, but I think it's very important if you're drafting before the NFL draft.
Yeah, I do think it's possible that they do fall a little bit, just because teams might think, oh, this is a deep RB class, I can take one later, I don't have to take one now. But I do think they are worthy round 2 NFL draft prospects, and I think that they're probably more likely than not to go there.
All right, just wanted to broach the conversation. Let us know in the comments below how you feel, who you'd be picking here, whether we got it right, wrong, somewhere in between. Love to hear from you. Love to engage with you down there. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.